Correct. That's the new norm we should use.
Uh, Sir, so let me start. So, good afternoon, everyone. So, once again, welcome to the fourth day of the NHRD National Conference. And I hope that all of you had a wonderful time hearing the stories from our young HR leaders, Mr. Shivang Ganatra and Ms. Roma Bintu. So, now it's time to hear from the industry veterans, the HR industry veterans, about gazing into the crystal ball to imagine the future of HR. So, for this upcoming discussion, we have with us quite an eminent panel. So, let me take this opportunity to welcome our panel consisting of Mr. Ashok Ramachandran. He is the Group Executive and President HR of Aditya Birla Group. We also have Mr. Raj Raghavan, Senior Vice President and Head HR of Indigo Airlines. We also have Mr. Krish Shankar, EVP and Group Head HRD of Infosys, and Ms. Anuradha Rasdan, the Executive Director HR and HUL VP HR from Unilever South Asia. It's a privilege to have you all here today. Last but most importantly, we have one person who would drive this discussion forward, and he would be the oxygen for this discussion. It's none other than Mr. Varadrajan S., whom we call Raja Sir. He's the executive coach and board advisor. Welcome to this discussion, sir, and I would request you to take this over from here.
Thank you, Kirti. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. There's no doubt that COVID, in whatever form, has been the single biggest event to have shocked the business world since the global financial crisis. Organizations had to make some very swift changes to the way they work with a view to maintain business continuity as well as at the same time ensure the safety of their people. A new landscape is emerging, marked by lessons learned from the pandemic and a new or renewed dedication in the people processes, which will influence organizations' ability to execute and succeed. So, the greatest contribution an HR professional and in turn a CHRO can make to an organization is to be able to support the CEO and the board in getting ready for the unexpected and then working closely together to meet and overcome those challenges, which is unexpected turn of events. I went through various studies, and based on various studies conducted by the likes of Deloitte, KPMG, Gartner, and others, some future trends, HR trends I see are shifting towards a full-time remote work post-pandemic or right now. Virtual work is here to stay. Most of us will agree that COVID has debunked some of the preconceived views on employee productivity in the office. With a large share of the workforce working from home, it's proven that rigid office schedules and working policies, as we used to know them, do not necessarily lead to higher productivity. We will also see an increased proportion of different type of workforce, like the gig and temporary workers in the organizations. With companies moving to a larger work from home model, I wonder what will happen to the physical offices. In my own opinion, offices provide identity and a sense of belonging. Human beings are social animals. The smell and sense of belongingness help very cohesive interdependence and harmony. Now, there is a fear that all this may get lost in the work from home concept, which is part of future of work. How will we manage to keep these strengths as work is redefined? Hopefully, we'll be able to adapt to some of the old to the new and arrive at a hybrid model of working. Technology adoption and digital initiatives have more than tripled over the past year or two and will continue to remain the focus area. Employees will value their feedback being heard and acted upon. So, employee experiences will become much more critical than earlier. HR will become a center of innovation. We need to reorganize HR so it can develop and deliver in a very agile manner, become data driven, and a laser like focus on employee experiences, including the way we manage people. Mental health will continue to get the attention it deserves. Companies will start investing a lot more into that. Business leaders will also prioritize skill development across platforms, keeping in view the growing remote nature of work. Now, crystal ball gazing makes the HR practitioner somewhat of a clairvoyant who somehow try to visualize things that are in his or her mind. A true practitioner needs to have a magnifying glass and a binocular. A binocular denotes an ability to forecast better, and a magnifying glass denotes analytical skill to have a closer look at realities and an ability to analyze the trends and develop strategies for the future. I'm very happy that we have a very powerful and experienced set of HR wizards with us to look into the crystal ball and share their perspectives on what the future looks like and deliberate on what challenges and opportunities await future HR leaders and how we can equip ourselves to succeed. The way the discussion will flow is I will ask each one of the speakers for their opening remarks, and then I will start some questions which I have to the panelists, and also take some questions from the participants. So let me start with Raj. Raj, please share your opening remarks and perspective on the subject.
Thank you, Raja, and it is awesome to be connected with old colleagues and friends, and I look forward to a very enriching session this afternoon. So let me give a quick preview of what the industry that I work for presents us. Obviously, 95% of our workforce cannot work from home. Imagine a time when you're sitting in a plane and you get an announcement from the cockpit saying, well, I'm working virtually. This is going to be, your plane is going to take off virtually and land. And I think most of us will get off the plane. And as a result, I think the whole concept of work from home, I think came about only during the pandemic. And right after the pandemic got over, we have been pretty much back into work, other than, during the waves, etc. So that makes this industry a lot different from just a talent attraction standpoint. Where you don't need talent to have specific industry experience and where they can go to other kind of industries, that becomes a bit of a challenge. And also, the pandemic has had an impact on the financials of the company, and so we have had to take a lot of actions in terms of pay cuts, restoration, and all of that. So I can say if half my body is in the tawa and the rest of the body is in deep freezer, on the whole, I'm comfortable kind of a feeling, right? And that it's but in a way, it's been a HR leader's dream, and I think as an organization, we have stayed together. As an organization, we have showed a lot of resilience, and I think HR has had a lot of role to play in it. Now, in terms of, I don't know if I can gaze into the future, but there are a few quick things I think we've learned over the last 2 years, Raja. Much like we talk of total compensation and where you put everything in together, I'm beginning to think that we are getting into a phase where we'll talk of total employee. Now, a total employee, goes beyond just the top performers, and we have been very focused on top performers, etc. I think we're going to focus a lot more on the entire employee workforce, and more importantly, I think there's going to be a lot of focus on skills. What are your current skills? What are the future skills needed? How can you be as flexible as you can in an industry that offers very little flexibility? One of the things we have tried to do for working mothers, be it the flying crew, cockpit, or cabin, is to get into flexible contracts, and some of them even do only weekend working. And how can we move people into a variety of other roles? We have really started getting big on our Friends and Fly program, which basically means that, Raja, you and I can be pilots. Not that anybody will trust the airplanes with us, but we can get trained if we want. So a lot of other things which we would have conventionally not done, we have started to do, and I think that's showing a lot of impact. The second, I think, big impact, at least what I've seen with Indigo, is the whole involvement of HR in ESG, right? And ESG, as those of you already know, is environment, social, and governance. And in my mind, the impact of HR on the social part is probably going to be the biggest, and it includes inclusion, diversity, and equity. And I think more importantly, it includes the entire monitoring the impact kind of thing for the HR group. And I think that's going to be a big deal in addition to governance. Many of us are invitees into boards. Many of us are permanent invitees into the board committees. be it NRC or some of us are board members ourselves. So I think the governance part also is going to be big. And finally, and I'll close with this, the whole, there's no shortcut to building culture, right? All of us have had so much pride, at least at Indigo, we've had a lot of pride in building a culture that is both employee oriented as well as customer oriented. And there's a shortcut to that. And I think HR as an organization is going to play a very, very key part there.
Thanks, Raj. I'm thankful that the pilot is not sitting at home and guiding the flight. But I think soon, with technology advancement, that will also be possible in the near future. Um, Anu, can we have your perspective on the topic?
So, thank you for having me here, and a real pleasure to be here with esteemed colleagues and dear friends. Um, Building on what Raj just shared, I wanted to offer an alternate perspective. And we are a company of brands, and we spend a lot of time on consumer research and insights. And I really believe that what we hear as consumer insights today are really the employee insights of tomorrow, because we are all consumers in our own right, and the behaviors that we see or we exhibit as consumers somewhere also translates into our expectations of the workplace. And one of the pieces of research that we have done extensively with consumers in the last few months call 2022 the year of the Great Escape. And basically, what uh, the thrust of the message is that while the pandemic is over, or hopefully it's behind us, I think the reverberations of it are going to continue. And it's almost like a post pandemic era where people are sort of going through recovery, re entry, and within that, reinvention. And there is this big theme of, on one hand, wanting to go back to doing things that are simple, at the same time, larger issues of wanting to care for the climate, this whole thing of hybrid lives, the need that life is short and we have to do something now, and of course, to escape from financial pressures. And this is something which we see coming out as big consumer trends. And like I said, if I were to draw from that into what it means for employees and what we hear employees within the organization share with us, talk with us, I think the years to come are going to really mean a rewriting of the employer employee contract and code. And some of the things that we see as people start to reinvent is, the first is, what I call the and syndrome, that it's not, definition of success is no longer only about the career. People have really embraced this life is too short, you only live once, and therefore, it's no longer about career progression and pay hikes. There is a larger persona of an individual that has come into being. And so, passions, fulfillment, well being, a sense of balance are right up there and are really front and center to the conversations that the employee brings into the organization and their work. The second is absolutely no dearth of choice and options. I think we're also lucky to be in an economic context where there is such an inflow of funds and support for digital first brands and tech. And there is such a world of opportunities out there that there is a real scope to do things very differently from how they were done before. And digital technology, consumer tech are all here to stay. And there is this big conversation in the mind of the employee around, I have a lot of options, and therefore, we recently launched two experimental work models where people can do gigs, people can dip in and out of work, and we're amazed at the offtake that we see from a variety of segments of employees. And the third one, which again is linked to this great escape, is, that my identity, building my brand, and that I am more than what happens to me and what the organization does to me. And I think there is a whole sense of myself, my worth, and this is really going to have a big play in how we sort of rewrite the future. Within all this, I think when the employee is going through all this, it is not a straight path for managers and leaders who have to lead for such teams. And I think that one of the biggest determinants of success is how we equip leaders and managers to cope with this, because they are going through a whole set of challenges where jobs are being re-engineered. We are saying let's move to agile ways of working. Please cope with teams who work hybrid. And this has put and of course give space to well-being and people's balance. And therefore, I think the whole role of the manager, how it evolves, how we help them be successful, are some of the trends which are going to be very real in the times to come. And I'll take a pause here.
Thank you. Thank you, Anu. I love the way you looked at the customer's centricity and looking at outside in and how it will shape the organization of the future. Coming to you, Ashok, what are your perspectives, and from where you are sitting, how do you look at this future of work?
Yeah, no, thanks, Raja. Thanks, Raja NHRDN, for inviting us on the forum today. Pleasure to be here. NHRDN is clearly our absolutely prime channel for us to be part of the HR fraternity, and I hope all of us, more and more of us, enroll in the NHRDN setup and participate in these forums. So thanks, folks, for joining in on a Saturday pre-lunch with a little bit of pressure on the panel to kind of land you guys properly. So few thoughts, and I think Raj and Anu have really set the stage for this subject. And as I was leafing through my points to connect, I think many of those are clearly resonating for me as well, both as an HR professional as well as part of the Aditya Birla Group. Let me give you three buckets quickly as I see the context emerging. One is there's obviously the economy, society, political landscape is changing. The technology landscape is changing. We also sense that the ESG point that Raj mentioned is really coming alive. So companies and actually the countries are making calls on what kind of company should we have, what kind of industry and technology should we have, what kind of supply chain parameters should we have. So the first thing which strikes me in this environment is the whole disruption to the business model is something we must appreciate of what we are going through. Some of us might be going through intensely. I have a range of businesses where some are positively affected by this phase, some are seriously negatively affected by this phase. So when you look at a spectrum, you say, what do you then script employee experience? What do you do as an HR role? How do you prepare people for the success? What does sizing up of uncertainty mean? So clearly organizations are requiring to be clearly far more agile to the very business model design. What was assumed as expansion plans is no more an assumption. What is assumed as supply chain efficiencies can't be assumed anymore. Technology obsolescence is clearly shot through the roof. Jargon of AI, ML, digital, which is still a little bit of the shade of the jargon tail still on, but it's starting to become real now. So those of us who can cope with it will survive. So this age of change seems cast upon us. The pandemic has aggravated it, as Anu said, and pandemic notwithstanding, I think we would have landed there sooner than later as well. So what I see, Raja, happening is the whole strategy, therefore the approach to markets, structures of companies and internal processes are changing. And this is just not a cliche. I think these are changing. Actually, if you see it's not changing drastically enough, check, because maybe you're not keeping in pace with the times of change. Internal technologies that we leverage on, digital, these are becoming key business drivers. What these internal technologies are, word productivity is clearly in the mainstream now. And that's another angle to the effectiveness and efficiency of an organization. So you got to make the right choices. Are you making the right choices? We know in some of our businesses where we've made the right choices, we have flourished. where we were delayed in making the choices, we are absolutely not there in the picture. So it's no more linear. You got to make sure the technologies, the choices you make, the marketplace decisions you make are correct. When I say decisions we make, it obviously goes back to people, leaders that you nurture, and so on. So, therefore, what is leadership coming to is a third bucket I want to reflect on. I think all of us, maybe industry and India, has had a phase of leaders who've gone through successful runs. They say, the stock markets have seen many money managers who've made good when the markets have always been good in the last 7-8 years. But you've got to see the ups and downs, and we're now coming across leaders who need to be business savvy. Speed of readiness is coming up as super critical. So leaders who are not ready to face the future and are not prepared to lead us well could well take you to the cleaners. And there's an HR angle, employee angle to think. Resilience, courage to take the right decision. Courage means preparedness. Are you prepared to make the right call? Do you have a diverse enough mindset to absorb the variety of factors hitting you? And importantly, leaders, I think, are coming up for authenticity. And I think people are starting to get discerning about it. You might be a successful company today, but I don't want to work with you simply because I consider the word culture that Raj and Anu spoke about as super critical. So companies, all of us are on test for authenticity, for resilience, for culture that we believe we profess, and going beyond the posters and the value statements and so on. Is it really lived? Culture is a smell. No? A smell can stink or smell well. So it's a bit of a reputation. And therefore, these are becoming softer critical, Raja. And I think the HR role which is coming up is baked in this context.
Okay.
Baked in understanding the business model, baked in knowing the org design and transformation essentials that you need to be good at. You can't just waft into a room and say, I feel we should do this. You're going to be challenged to say, why do you say so? So organization design, transformation is coming into core. Do I know my employee? Anu captured that beautifully. What are the employee aspirations that I need to cater to? And maybe 2 points which I want to leave behind. I'm reflective about our own role in terms of, am I helping the employee prepare for success? So it's not about doing learning and talent development and processes and sending people out for training. Am I helping you succeed? I think HR has to be more accountable for that.
Agreed.
And therefore, am I a talent scout? Am I helping you succeed? Becomes the imperative today. So I think these are, I would say, tones of the future that we need to cater to, Raja.
Great. Thanks, Ashok. Thanks so much for your thoughts. Krish, coming to you, I kept you in the last because I need a pinch hitter. And, why don't you share your perspectives on the topic and how you see this?
No, I think thanks, Raja, and again a pleasure to be here, and thank you all for joining in on a Saturday. It's always good to, as a HR community, get together through this through NHRD and kind of learn from each other. Why you call me a pinch hitter, but our openers have already done the job. Yeah, I think they've kind of hit the ball out of the park, and now I've got to just go wash my hands and say, listen, relax, nothing more to do. So what I can do is try and summarize a little bit. So that's probably the right thing to do. See, there are two things. I think we've got to, maybe start with a caveat. I think the caveat is there is something called a recency effect. Yeah? I think we sometimes are kind of victim to that. And I think Bill Gates said this very nicely. He said that we overestimate some actions in the near term, but underestimate them in the long term. Yeah. Just imagine this whole pandemic, we said all will work from home, etc., etc. The whole world will work from home. But very soon, some people are saying, listen, that's not really going to be workable. We got to get people back to work, etc., etc. And I was speaking to a pharma company a couple of weeks ago, a couple of them, and they're saying, listen, our manufacturing has to come to office, our R&D has to come to office, our sales and medical reps have to go and meet doctors. Who will work in HR and finance? That's about it. The rest all have to be there. So that industry is very different. And look at Raj Raghavan's Indigo. I mean, you can't be sitting at home. Maybe HR and finance can sit, but all the others have to come and work. So I think industry to industry, and take IT for example, like Infosys, Accenture, we still have 97% of our people working from home. So we have very different ends of the spectrum. So what we got to be is that, you know, I think we have little bit taken by this recency effect. We got to just step back and say, okay, what are those changes that as HR we should really kind of think about? So what I'll try and do, and this is a good way to summarize all the brilliant stuff that all I've said, is just try and put the changes into, let's say, two categories. Yeah, one I would put as what we call as macro changes. Yeah? And there are some macro changes that have been happening for time. They've been happening over time, and the pandemic has just kind of accelerated it. Put it up on a much more steeper curve. I think the first one is this role of technology, yeah? And we see that happening everywhere. Lots more automation, lots more this, and the pandemic has only created a greater speed for digitization. I think a company which never thought it would be digital is now becoming digital. So therefore, that's very important, and that means that you got to keep learning, and that means that technology can disrupt your business. So that's don't underestimate the role of technology. It can kind of eat your meal. So we got to keep that in the picture. The second one is this whole focus on green, sustainability, climate, all of that. I think there's a lot of focus around it, and I think that's something. And Raj mentioned about ESG because that's becoming important, companies wise as well as for the macro. The third big change, which is partly through the pandemic, is this whole concept of work from home. But what comes out of it is this need for flexibility. Yeah? And I think we can all work remotely. This technology is making us work remotely. Tomorrow there's going to be a metaverse. I know Raj is talking about people may not need to fly. They'll be sitting in a metaverse and working with people, all across. So who knows what's going to happen? So therefore, there is this digital workplace and other things that could come in the future. But those are the macro ones. But if I just look at and take people and taking a leaf out of what Anu said about understanding people and their things, there are 4 or 5 trends that we got to really be ready for. Number one, clearly, is this pandemic has shown us there is a greater need for flexibility. Yeah? Everybody wants more flexibility. If they want to work from home, they like that. They probably come 1 or 2 days a week if they want. If they can't come, they say, give me more flexibility. Maybe, in manufacturing, give me 4 days a week, give me 3 days off. I want more flexibility. So that's becoming a strong need that we all have to be ready for. The second one is this whole drive for seeing more purpose in what we are doing. And again, Anu mentioned that. I think you see people saying, and they're questioning during this pandemic. It may go away in some cases, but still there is this seed saying, am I being meaningful? What am I doing? Is my job meaningful? So therefore, that is becoming much more stronger. And given the so many options that people have, they also kind of, can take decisions and make choices based on their needs. I think the third big area is we see a huge now generational kind of a mix. In every organization, you see that not only diversity of generation, diversity of backgrounds, gender, global, many companies are global. So therefore, you see a huge diversity of things that we got to really deal with. And this diversity is also diversity of people thinking differently, and that's also there in the workplace. And how do you really manage that is going to be another very, very big challenge. The last one is really, two more, sorry. The last two is all about what we call as a skills economy. Yeah? Shorter career horizons. People are not thinking much more longer. They're saying, listen, I look at every job 3 to 5 years and decide what to do. Nobody joins a company and says, listen, I'm going to be here for 20 years. They don't do that. They say, let me see what it is. And because of that, there is this focus on skills. And tomorrow, companies may not be saying, which engineering college are you from? But they may say, do you have a skill to do Java? And that's about it. So maybe we'll move more to something kind of a skills economy, using these shorter career paths, and that means faster learning. And the last thing is this whole change in what leadership means. And I think Ashok spoke very well about it. In a hybrid or remote way, it is not charisma which is important, but it is authenticity. It is how you enable others to do. So I think our benchmarks of great leaders will also change. We'll need more empathetic leaders, people who look forward to that. We'll need leaders who kind of are setting the right culture, yeah? And therefore enabling others to do, being both the kind of servant leaders will all become more important. So I think those would be the five broad trends in my view. Number one, the greater need for flexibility, a greater focus on meaningfulness or purpose. Number three, this thing about shorter career horizons and then the skills economy. Number four, which will be all about the leadership, and I just forgot what is the fifth one.
Diversity. Gen X,
Diversity.
generational diversity.
The not only gender, the enormous amount of
generational.
diversity that we'll all have to manage in our workforce. So I
Great.
think those are the things in summary.
Wow, you did that well, Krish. I'm going to combine questions of both what is coming from the audience and my own questions. Raj, this question is for you. During the pandemic, and because you are a very well spread out organization, how did you manage employee communication? And what is the context of the communication in the initial period? Because aviation was hit the most. No flights, nothing was happening. So how did you manage that?
Yeah, there are a couple of things, right, Raja? One is communicating doesn't mean you're just pushing out emails and expecting people to listen to you and follow what you're telling them to do. To me, communicating is very much like I think what Anu mentioned, and later Shankar very nicely put that together. Was do you really understand your employee and what does employee work experience means? In my mind, Raja, one of the things we have tried to do well, and we started this in January 2020 with a question that we have so much data about our customers. We know so much about our customers and we know what our customers want. Do we have the same about our employees? Do we know what our employees want? Do we understand employee needs? And do we know whether the workplace experience an employee has is good enough for the employee to feel motivated and perform well? So she then goes and provides customer service. So what used to be a once in a year Aon survey and picking up from my Amazon experience, we made it to pulse questions. So we run the same set of 32 questions 4 times in a year at different times. So in the last 2 years, Raja, I have so much rich data about what employees are telling you. Now, of course, they can I mean, Everybody Lies is a beautiful book that I'm now reading in terms of why people won't necessarily answer your survey questions well, but this at least gives you some data. And one of the things I'm trying to figure out, even as we communicate, I mean, all this happens, right? You have all kinds of medium to communicate, but the thing ultimately at the end of the day is my workplace experience measured in a way that it can get better, in a way that it's able to find bad managers. And Ashok said it beautifully. It's a time now to the cleaners. You'll go to the cleaners by bad managers. Can you identify those and then figure out what actually engages the employee and whether that engaged employee with a great workplace experience make a difference to the customer? And one of my areas of research that I'm really trying to get deep into, Raja, is if there is not just a correlation, but also a causation between employees' workplace experience and the customer service she provides, and whether that has an impact on the financials. So I think when all these things happen, you start communicating, you start listening in. You have leaderboards, and we have leaderboards where you're supposed to, it gets timed. The questions that ask you and how long you take to respond to them gets timed. Now we have now started to do physical, sessions, going back there, etc. So I think it's all a combination. It just when I say communication, it's just not sending a video out or an email, but a combination of all of these, and that's what we're trying to do. And I think that's what is going to be the superpower some of our HR leaders need to have in the future. How do you really think of your employee the way your business thinks of the customer? If I were to put it in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you. Ashok, this question is for you. What would you say are the key cornerstones of a terrific employee experience in the future?
Yeah. I think Anu and others covered that part a little bit as a context. And I think people are asking for purpose and meaning and value for time that they spend. So, what was a massive HR policy to allow flexibility of a limited nature, etc., is now, after the pandemic, gone out of the window. Even the HR mind has had to be more agile and open and less precedent driven. If you go back to history of HR, all of us are very careful about scripting stuff. And I think that phase is truly over. And I think we are coming into a phase where employee experience is at the center stage of attraction and retention. And at the heart of the company is the employee. And therefore, if I look at what I see employees, and we are in touch with a whole range of people on this subject, right from trainees upwards to senior leadership, everybody is saying, can you simplify systems and processes into what Raj called as customer grade? Why is it that the company cannot give me customer grade experience? Call it digital interface, or simply give me fantastic experience right from through my life cycle, and which includes what HR people we segment into verticals. We call something called onboarding, we call something called hiring, then we have training, then we have something else, we have performance management method. Oh, the employee says, can you cut all this and simply give me a seamless experience where I come and give my best? You enable me on that, and therefore the bureaucracy and the rhythm becomes lower. So I think the core of employee experience has to be redesigned, and we need to get this right. And the patience, because there are choices, there are alternatives. Therefore, employees will stay with you for that as a table stake. It's not like a differentiator anymore. It's expect. The second cornerstone, I would say, of employee experience is all about, how do I call it, opportunities and careers. At the end of the day, people want, in a given time, the richness of quality of opportunities and careers. And if I can give you a range of opportunities and enable you to succeed, you build what is called a career as an end product. And if you do that while you enjoy yourself working with a great bunch of people and have fun, because there is meaning for life and meaning for your time, and not just delivery of role, I have captured your imagination of what is called opportunities and careers.
Okay.
So the ecosystem then plays out for you. And the third differentiator, Raja, which I think the third, I would say, tripod of employee experience, and this is, how do you call it? It takes years to build, it takes a minute to get lost, which is the quality of your leaders and authenticity, which is a smell test. I can put the best of posters, I can give you the best of frameworks and gyan, but the truth is you'll know me for my smell. Okay, a reputation smells or stinks, and either way it shows. Okay, so I think leaders are the third part of the tripod of employee experience. It's not HR alone. It's about who you want to work with. Are your leaders in command? Would I enjoy creating excellence with this person? And therefore, I would pitch my time and life in this phase, as Krish said, to this organization. So I think that's the tripod I see working on employee experience.
Great. Thank you, Ashok. Anu, this is a question for you. How do you see managing mindset of, there is a lot of disruption happening in the workplace, much faster than I've ever known. How can we prepare ourselves to face and overcome these disruptions as it goes by? What will you advise? And what sort of skills do you think should be there for that?
So, Raja, I think the disruption is in part of because of what's happening in the external context, the macroeconomic context, the opportunities, the technological leap that we will make, and our businesses will be forced to make, but also because of this point that Krish mentioned earlier, that the existence of the multi-generational workforce together. And I was looking at a piece of research which said that never before have there been 4 generations of the workforce who are present together. And that is not because you could ask, why is this different from before? But because generations are now taking leaps in much shorter cycles than earlier. So if earlier 7 or 8 years made for differences, now it's only 5 or 6 years. and therefore we see a lot of disruption because of a lot of conflicting and different sort of factors coming into play. I think that aligning the organization, and here the role of the leadership team is absolutely critical, to a common business goal and agenda. Something that we have always done is critical, but to do it with a simplicity, and at the same time, being agile and being able to prioritize in shorter cycles of impact is key. And therefore, making sure that there are fewer things, more focus, and even in the way we hold people accountable, give them feedback. I think that it needs a lot of streamlining, a lot of focus rather than a whole host of initiatives, because people don't have place and time for that kind of clutter in their lives. And we just have to keep the focus. And
Okay.
I think the behaviors are really about agility, about willingness to change, willingness to listen, adapt. I think this will be critical.
Okay. Thank you, Anu. Krish, I know that your recent book talked a lot about culture. So, with a multi-generational workforce, um, and managing mindsets of theirs, and how do you think we can build a culture of this workforce in a hybrid work scenario? When they were in office, you can always do some things of symbolism, some acts of symbolism, some, to bring them together. But in a hybrid workforce, how do you create that culture and how do you manage their mindsets?
It's a tough question. I think there's lots of research going on saying how do you manage that. See, in the past, how did you build culture? I think you build culture through various things. The leaders, I think that's very important. Their presence and their actions. That's a big one. You also build it around various physical artifacts. Your meeting rooms, your canteens, your lunch rooms. So they all were areas where culture was really played out. And therefore you could see that. Now I think you got to say, okay, how do I really think about culture? And if you were to really look at what exactly is culture, as Ashok said, it is the spell of the place. Is it what behaviors are kind of valued? That's what basically culture is. And I think you got to now think in a hybrid way. How do I really reinforce this? And therefore, clearly, the role of leaders is very, very important. Articulating what they want and setting that example in many ways. And now they've got to adopt. It's not just physical town halls that will do, but they've got to adopt much more digital ways of doing it. They've got to be much more present in smaller conversations digitally, videos, podcasts, whatever it is. You got to talk a lot more about it. Number two, it's not just what you talk, but your actions. Yeah. And I think that's the key thing saying, and this makes it even more important saying, if these are the elements of your culture, how do your actions prove it? And that's a role that HR has to drive along with the leaders. So therefore, just ensure that those kind of things are even in a digital way, people can see it.
Okay.
The third part is you experience culture also digitally. So therefore, if that is so, how do you really architect your whole digital experience to talk about your culture? For example, I'm just taking a small one. I mean, there could be many examples. For example, if you have your performance management and you're going to be hybrid and you're going to be doing whatever, not so much face to face, but would you still have key elements that are even digital, but really bringing out the elements of your culture, which means greater conversations, better feedback? How do you reinforce all of that? So therefore, you have to think about your behaviors, what you really want, but and translate it to a much more of a hybrid or a digital kind of a world. And it will take some time doing. I think some companies are already on the way of doing it, but it's something we've got to keep doing it. And try and simulate various water cooler conversations through, there was this recent study by Harvard which said that, even if you get small teams together in a hybrid way and talk to them and simulate like a water cooler conversation, that helps in, retaining them, that helps in, getting them to understand the company. So you got to simulate those kind of things. So a lot of things, but I would just like to summarize that role of leaders is very important. They've got to be much more digital and much more articulate in what they want to do, and they've got to do more there. how we translate our talk or thoughts into action and behave, and our actions will speak much more louder in a digital world. So we got to reinforce that. This whole digital experience, if whatever elements of your culture, how do you translate into this digital experience? That's what.
Okay. Okay.
So I think
Great.
these are the things we cover.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Krish. Raj, this is the question for you. Someone has asked a question saying that what is future? Is it 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, whatever? And what sort of surprises that HR should be expecting? And combined to that, based on your own experiences in Amazon and Indigo, talk about one or two new skills that HR leaders need to develop.
Yeah. Thanks much.
I have three
Firstly,
questions in one.
absolutely, I'll do that. Firstly, I was really taken in by how Shankar put the entire concept of culture together. It was like sitting in a master class,
Yeah.
but it was beautiful, very beautifully illustrated. And I'm kind of learning so much from Anu and Ashok and Raja. Even as I'm a speaker into this, I'm making a lot of notes. So firstly, thanks for that. See, future is a very interesting word. Thich Nhat Hanh says, you can't do anything about yesterday. You can't do anything about tomorrow. Today is what you can do something about. And in my mind, what you do today in anticipation of what will come tomorrow is important. Let's take, for example, what Amazon used to do before. One of the programs Amazon had was on career, basically on career transitions. Now you have people who come into your workforce in the fulfillment centers as packers and pickers and all of that. But what they then did was, what if you want to be an electrician? What if you want to be a plumber? What if you want to be an electronics engineer? What if you want to be an operations manager? And they put together a program that basically said, we'll pay you for your courses, but at the end of it, you will not have your current job. So it was kind of, it's firstly you're shocked because, you're saying, I'll pay for you to be an electronics engineer, but then you don't have your job as an electrician. And what did they say? They basically said, well, I want you to be able to future proof your own career. And then after you are done with your undergrad degree or whatever, your job is gone. You need to go find another one with an Amazon, and Amazon will continue to grow. So that was a great way of future proofing an employee career. Now, how do you future proof an organization? And I think the best times to learn organizational future proofing is during the tough times. When things are great, you don't do any of that because you're just sailing along, or maybe you're trying to do more of the same. But so what happened to the aviation industry when passengers never had to fly during the first lockdown or during the second one? So the industry basically tried to do a variety of other things, and some of it was all innovation. Cargo was a huge opportunity, and people still needed to get goods shipped here and there. And then there was so much issues in terms of road transport because there was so much state to state issues they had with lorries getting blocked for number of days, etc. So Indigo started our cargo was a huge business only then. We didn't have cargo planes like others had. So we said we will start putting cargo on the seats. So the airplanes that we could not use for the customers, we started using for cargo, and then we had to work with the regulatory agencies as well as the aircraft manufacturers. And the only thing is you had to pack all of these in a certain way so it sits on a seat. So we started using that. The second one, and again, this is about future proofing, is looking at charters. Oftentimes, a passenger airline doesn't look at charters as a huge opportunity because who would come and pay 5.5 lakhs for a trip from Delhi to Pune, for 5 people? But that was an opportunity. I mean, there was a time I know there was this couple who took one of our ATRs from Vishakhapatnam to Hyderabad, and the ATR stopped there for 2 hours. They went into the city of Hyderabad, picked up their pet, came into the ATR back again, and flew back to Vizag. And I know, and these look like folklore, right? The thing is, you should be able to foresee some of these things coming. Now, not everything is about foresight. It's also about getting prepared when you go knock yourself against the wall. I'll just give one small example from Amazon and I'll then shut up, right? So I don't know how many of you know this product Amazon launched in 2015 or 14. It was called Fire Phone. And Fire Phone was supposed to be, giving a huge competition to iPhone. So we launched the Fire Phone in the US at the same price as an iPhone. Within a week's time, we knew it was going nowhere. We reduced the price by $300 and gave the $300 back to the customer. And then within about 2 weeks' time, it became 50% of the price. In 4 weeks' time, we started giving it for free. Basically, because we had built so much inventory of the phones, you can't do a shit about it because Foxconn had already started making it on your order. And so the quarter ended, and of course, and the results showed that we lost $1 billion on the Fire Phone. So the question that was asked of Jeff Bezos was, how many people did you fire? He said, none. What do you mean? You lost more than $1 billion? Nobody lost their job? He said, no. If somebody had to take responsibility for it, it was me, and it is the future. So whatever we lost here is not a loss. We learned. We learned for experience for the future and what we will do with it. Now, people thought that this was another gizmo that he was trying to do for the stock price. But in exactly 12 months' time, Amazon launched Alexa. And all the features that Fire Phone had and did not work so beautifully on the Alexa. And there was a time they couldn't even fulfill customer orders. So what I'm saying is, future is still very hazy. If you can crystal ball and look into it, nothing like it. The five of us are trying to do it now. By 115, will we be able to do it? I don't know. But what you can do from your own mindset and an organization mindset, I think is as important as how you can predict the future.
Great. When you said Alexa, the Alexa next to me woke up and said, asking me what. So, okay, great.
I just want to, Raja, add a point to what so Raj, fantastic examples, and I think you really brought the topic alive with this example, real world. So thank you for that, Raj. And I think these are real stories of where it is. I adding to a point, and I think, and Raja, maybe after this point, I'm going to kind of swing the table to you and say, you have a lot of experience, so let's swing a question to you and kind of let the panel take a break. Okay, so I see, for me, I see the HR ability to predict or work with predictions becoming critical. So if an HR person is not really connected with what is happening in the context, you could well be completely outplaced in what you need to deliver. And I don't think people need HR people to deliver the basics of HR processes. So you need to be a very connected HR person to be able to support the business and proactively so. Second, I see a need for HR people to now, and this is not a new age skill, but I sense it's a skill which is going to be required more in the road ahead, which is about courage and empathy that Chris spoke about, and practicing the need for a backbone. These are not times for soft middle paths all the time. You've got to be able to take courageous, frank stances. You've got to be able to distinguish leaders who are toxic. You need to be able to put action and the money where the mouth is and build boldly. So building boldly is a leadership thing which I think is coming up for HR people as well to practice. Okay. Is my gut. So that's one point. I just wanted to add to what Raj is saying. But these are big stories of decision making that Raj is explaining. Raja, you've been in the forefront of many organizations. Thank you for facilitating this for us as a panel. But obviously, you have rich experiences as well to share. And when you managed organization transformation, and you've seen Vistara, you've seen some big changes in telecom. Where do you see some of the key skills being practiced? Number one. Number two, give me a couple of examples of where HR people fail, and therefore, what's the learning you've found for yourself as well? So, quick minute with you, and then we can swing to maybe Anu.
Look, thanks for asking me that. I find that there are some skills which are required by an HR professional, and which is very, very essential even in the past, but is being shown and highlighted more at this present point of time, is the ability to be agile, adaptable, and versatile to changing times, managing uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And also the sort of empathy which you show for a employee, the demonstrating the genuine care. I've been part of the Tata Group for many years, and I found that caring is a part of our value system there. And as a result of that, anything which happens there, the employee comes first to say that if I take care of the employee will take care of the organization. The service mindset, as I see it, came across very, very clearly in those instances. And of course, what we have always called as resilience, which we need to have to ensure how we are able to take a project through despite all odds, is something which is very, very critical. Let me give an example from my SpectraMind days. We built SpectraMind from scratch, a third-party BPO company, and we became the largest third-party company in India at one point of time. When we initially started, we needed so many people which are not available in the market. Every study said we have about 1 million graduates passing out every year, but we didn't know under which woodwork they were hiding, because the people who came to us, we are not able to select. 1 out of every 10 was what we were selecting. And then we said that how do you manage to create an awareness? We actually went to the parents, to say that we went into the heads of the parents to say, at that point of time, a call center job was seen to be a very low level job. And, there were things to say, these people go out in the night, in the late evening, and come back early in the morning. What sort of work do they do? So we actually created a huge, communication open plan with the parents of employees, prospective employees, to come and witness for themselves what is happening there. The empathy which we went on to show what happens to people there. And that actually increased the inflow of people. We started looking at different avenues. And this was thinking of, I was talking about agility. This was one example of agility which we were able to bring into the table to get almost 3,500 people to join on a particular day. I'm talking about 2002 and 2003 was a mammoth task, and we managed to do that. The second thing which I've seen is listening to your employees, how well you have to listen. When I came from a large organization, the Tata Group, into a small organization like SpectraMind. When I set up the compensation structure, we had something called superannuation. So we used to have these focus groups with the employees. In one of the focus groups, the employee said, Raja, I think your compensation is bunkum. So I said, what? We said, you have superannuation, which doesn't suit us. So I said, look, it is for the future, social security and all that blah, blah, blah. The guy turned around and says, look, it's going to come after 30 years for me. What is the use of it now? That struck a bell for me. And that is the time we said, okay, let's listen. We removed superannuation out of the compensation package for people in the lower, middle and junior level. Listening to an employee and empathizing with what he or she wants is one of the other things where you can build a future organization. Okay, I can go on and on, and
No, thank you.
don't have that much of time.
Thank
Before we finish, I want to ask each one of you to react to with just one sentence, or better is one word, on what each one of you individually describe as a future of work and HR of tomorrow. Shanks, why don't we start with you?
Good point.
No, I think it's got to be agile and learning. I think these are the two words I will use for
Great,
HR.
thank you. Raj?
Hope. I think there's nothing better than hope and hopefulness.
Hope, okay. I'm sorry, that is okay.
Raja, I'll go with flexibility and opportunities.
Flexibility and opportunity. Oh, great.
Yeah, so
Wonderful words.
both mind and organizations have to cater to flexibility and opportunity.
Anu?
And I'll say human, purposeful, and accountable.
Wow, wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been a very interesting discussion, and I've learned a lot. I always go back to what Krish was saying, the recency effect. And, if I were to look at what has happened to us in the past, and the way forward for any HR young leader, I think you should imagine the car, driving a car. Okay? What is in the past is what you see in the rear view mirror. That's been made small so that you don't need to make it too big. But what you see ahead is like watching through the windscreen, which is a huge amount of thing available in the future, a landscape available in the future. If you're able to use experiences from the past, live the present, planning for the future, and go ahead on the road, on the journey of your business, whatever area you are in, I think success will follow. Thank you so much, Chris, Ashok, Anu, and Raj. It was a really interesting discussion and wonderful to be here. Over back to the moderator, Kirti.
Thank you all.
Raja and
Thank
you,
NHR.
Raja.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So that was a quite an engaging discussion, and I'm pretty sure that it has provided all of us, all the attendees, with sufficient food for thought in different genres that are there in the HR right now. And we would have really loved to have this discussion a little longer, but owing to the paucity of time, we need to conclude the session now. I express my sincere gratitude to all our four panelists and to Raja sir for having this great discussion. Hope all of you had a wonderful time. So now this marks the end of the first half of the fourth day of the NHRD National Conference. Let's now break for lunch and join in for the next session at 2 p.m. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Kirti. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All the best. Kirti,
Bye-bye.
thank you for hosting us. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
How do we get out? I'm struggling to get out now.
Yeah, I'm just seeing where does one.
How do I leave?
Ma'am, you can just...
You just have to, just leave by putting the arrow left.
All right.
See you all. Bye-bye.
See you guys.
Nice
Cheers.
meeting you again. Bye.
Good catch up. See you guys. Bye. See you, Kirti. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.